Veronica, what if I told you there was a method or practice that you could put into place with your podcast that would not only ensure your podcast growth, but also over time would automatically establish your brand?
I would probably ask you, how much is it going to cost me? And how difficult is it to put it into place? What's the catch?
And as I end the soldier and poet. Yes, tell this to all the world.
Hello, mis amigos. Welcome to the Bad Sound School podcast. I am your host, Veronica. I'm your branding and content strategist, podcast producer, and coach, and probably your favorite host. And today here with me is the professor of preamps and compressors and all of the thingy-majingies, Senor Studio Steve.
Hello, and yes, I love knobs and buttons and thingy-majingies, and I've come to terms with the fact that I'm the least preferred host, and that's okay because I'm still good to have around. I got lots of tips and tricks for you to level up and take your content to places.
This is your go-to podcast for amping up your podcasting chops and becoming a better podcaster, but also a better content creator.
And if you've been tuning in for a minute, you know that we're insane about this world of podcasting and content creation and entrepreneurship and making a dent in the online world and building and contributing to amazing communities.
Today's episode is part 2 of our Building Your Podcast Brand series. And it's all about creating with power. If you haven't yet started thinking about your podcast as a brand, we really want to urge you to start doing so. And we're packing a ton of useful information and actionable tips into this 3-part branding series. So if you're not driving or mowing the lawn, take out a pen and paper and get ready to take some notes.
And in this episode, we're talking all about creating with power. And we're talking about podcasting smarter, not harder. And what we mean by creating with power, simply put, is to have a well-planned out weekly workflow and incorporate repurposing. So in this episode, we're going to unlock all that stuff and separate the episode into 2 different parts. First, we're going to cover what is repurposing and how to do it easily. And then second, we'll talk about scheduling, workflow, and batch recording, which is how much time do you really need to spend every week on your show, and how can you trim that time down, and also how can you squeeze the most possible value out of every minute. And then finally, we'll finish the episode with your weekly homework. So be a good student and hang with us until the end of this episode for your assignments, and don't flake out on completing them. And in exchange for your time, Veronica promises that she will stay focused throughout the whole episode and keep her side tangenting to a minimum.
I was already daydreaming.
She'll keep her daydreaming to a minimum.
And what are your promises?
I don't know. What should my promises be?
That you're not going to be talking about the de-essers and the compressors and the EQers, the ESQers, the doodads, the XLRs, and the transducers or transducents. Or
No, not at any
given point.
Yeah, no.
During this episode, because you will lose me.
Okay. Well, let's just get to it.
Okay, so number 1.
Repurposing.
Okay, so let's start by talking about repurposing. If you haven't heard this term before, we'll just kind of quickly define it. So Veronica, if you can, could you put this term, repurposing, into like a paragraph minimum with no daydreaming?
Oh, so repurposing is to take one single piece of content and use it in different ways for different platforms.
Okay, so to take one single piece of content and to repurpose it into multiple pieces of content for different platforms.
Yeah.
Okay, that's easy enough. And is that as simple as just copying the content and pasting it everywhere?
No, that's what you want to do at the beginning because you're like, yes, score. I don't have to work hard. I'm just copy and paste this. And the same picture I would just post throughout all the social media platforms. But no, No, you have to do a little bit of tweaking. You have to do a little bit of expanding more in your ideas or your topics. You have to do a little bit more of researching and just make sure that you are posting stuff that is relevant for each social media platform.
Okay, cool. Well, I like that a lot. So let's just further kind of, get some terms out of the way, and so that everybody can be in ingredients of what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So let's just say that we're podcasters and our piece of content that we're referring to is a podcast episode.
Yes.
So what is a good practice, or just kind of a quick practice, a quick start way we could get started with repurposing a single podcast episode?
Okay, so if you script your episodes or if you outline your episodes, you've done the majority of the work, because writing and researching and coming up with a script or with an outline, it's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. So from there, then you use that nicely put together outline, and then you record your podcast episode, right? And then after you have recorded your podcast episode, then you can use that same outline and create all of the copy for your episode, your episode summary, your episode description, the title that you want to give it to your episode, that can come from there too. And then from there, you can use that copy when you're sharing your audiogram on social media. If you are posting on Facebook or Instagram, then those two platforms allow you to expand to have a semi-lengthy description or semi-lengthy caption that you can elaborate more, so you can leverage that outline or that script that you used for your podcast episode. You can use that same outline to create a blog for your website. And then you can embed the podcast episode into that blog and just make it in a format that into a nicely piece of written content, that it flows, that is coherent, and that is not choppy. So for that, you would have to elaborate more and change it for that format. Mm-hmm. Also, you can take it a whole new level, and you can record a video for YouTube. You have your script, and the only thing you need to do is to add your intros, add your audience retention statements, add your call to actions for YouTube, and then you will have your script for your video. And you can also use that copy for your video descriptions. And I mean, it just, you can use it for everything.
For everything.
Yeah.
I love that. So while you were giving us examples of all the different things you can use it for, I realized that a lot of things you might not even realize are pieces of content. Mm-hmm. And everything nowadays is content, you know? And so I love that even your podcast description, yeah, that's a piece of content. The title is a little micro piece of content. A tweet is a little micro blog, right? So you have all these different little pieces of content, and it's all coming from the same body of research, or it's all encapsulated in the same topic. And also it can all be created during the same time period.
During the same time period.
And that's really awesome stuff, and can really bring us to our next point.
So number 2, workflow, batchwork, and scheduling.
What's realistic and what's necessary?
Okay, so I like this. We're talking about workflow, batchwork, and scheduling. We've been experimenting a lot with batchwork, but we're always flying by the seat of our pants and working with clients and putting together these courses and everything else that we haven't really perfected.
And the moms
Batchworks.
are here.
Yeah, and then the moms come to visit, and then, geez.
The kids get sick.
Yeah. It's just, and so between all of that, it's like, it's hard to actually come up with a schedule that works, find a workflow that's conducive to what you have going on. And it's hard enough to just get that podcast episode written. But then once you kind of understand how awesome repurposing is, how powerful it can be, it becomes a shame to not do more with a single piece of content or just with a podcast episode.
Yeah, definitely.
And so we have been experimenting with a lot of different things you can do as far as batchwork, and batchwork is really cool. But I just wanted to kind of give my idea of something you could do as a workflow, and then which is going to kind of be very similar to what Veronica was saying, but just sort of to reiterate my idea of it. And then from there, maybe you can talk to us, Veronica, about your ideas of scheduling and how to make this realistic. And we'll talk about like how much time it takes and what's realistic. Like, so when you say, if you want to get really crazy and turn it into a YouTube video, like how much extra time is that really going to cost me every week? So we'll get into scheduling first, but before we get into scheduling, I just want to talk about kind of workflow and a little bit of batch work, what we mean by those two things. So with workflow, it's just like kind of what Veronica was saying. It's sort of, and we do this, you stop before you hit the record button and you ask yourself, how can I get more out of this? Can I quickly hop on? This is what Veronica likes to do. Can I quickly hop on IG stories? Can I make a quick reel about this? Can I grab some photos on my phone so that I have something to share on my social media, maybe prepping people for the episode that's going to come out after it's edited? So I can say, hey, I'm just recording my episode about this topic. How do you guys feel about this topic? What makes you angry or upset or passionate, whatever it is, right? So there's a lot of different ways with our phones and with cameras and with microphones that we can record lots of different pieces of content. And that's going to vary based off of lots of things, just like what your podcast is about and what your goals are for your podcast and all of that stuff, and to what pieces of, or what platforms you decide you want to be on. And I think that's really when we talk about workflow, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, because I think it's important to choose wisely. I think email marketing is a big one. I think almost everybody should do at least a little bit of email marketing. Do you think so too?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, email marketing is one of those things that is good to have because you don't know about, well, not too long ago, like a few months ago, Instagram was down, Facebook was down, WhatsApp was down. There's this fear, like, if they were to shut down, like, what do you do with your business if you can't get a hold of your people?
Yeah. And then there's other benefits too, like supposedly the email marketing is still one of the most effective ways to convert leads and to make sales. It's just a different way to communicate with your audience, and you'll find that you have different people that are more responsive through email marketing than others. But yeah, it's also just a way to really start thinking in terms of a business and thinking in terms of how you're going to, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about branding your podcast. We're talking about creating with power. Email marketing also is one of my favorites for podcast episodes because emails can almost be a copied and pasted version of your podcast. I mean, you basically just take the headlines, you do a little copy and pasting. So what took you a long time to put together this really nice podcast episode, if it's scripted at least, then you can easily sort of, instead of spending, let's say it took you 2 hours to write a good podcast episode, instead of spending another 2 hours to write a nice, good email, you duplicate the file and get a nice email out of it. Pretty easy to do that. And then you could do the same thing then you decide, do I want to be on YouTube? And what we're getting into, are you okay?
I know it looks like you're going to make me cry, but it's my contacts that they're bothering me so much.
So the stuff I'm saying isn't just like riveting
no.
life-changing?
So I'm like blinking and like I have watery eyes because I've been wearing these contacts all day.
I thought you were just struck with love for me.
Look at me.
You're just like, wow.
Why is she going to cry?
This gorgeous man. Oh, and he's so knowledgeable about his repurposing.
It's my contacts. So I really like what you're saying. And it's funny because I think you are sharing a little bit about what our video on Sunday it's going to be about.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's going to be a video that I will release soon about workflow and workflow for content creation. And I think the workflow for any content creator is the same. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter which platform you're at. It all starts with research, especially if you want to be seen. If you want to be discovered, then you should start with keyword research, with looking out there and see what people are searching for online.
Peer research.
Peer research and all that. And going back to the workflow, then you start with your research. And because it's very important that you know what the reach that you're going to have with that piece of content. If you start creating without doing your keyword research, without bothering to see if people are searching for your content, then the chances of you achieving your goals and hitting the targets that you want to hit, they're slimmer. But when you do keyword research, we do keyword research for our videos. You can do keyword research for your podcast episodes. So they show up on Google search. All of these things you can do. And then from there, then you start creating or researching your content and writing and putting together the outline or the script. And then from there, then you decide where you're going to put your content. Is it going to be on Facebook? Is it going to be Facebook video? Is it going to be a Facebook post? Is it going to be Instagram Reels? And then you create your content, right? Then you record your podcast episode. Then you do your video. Then you move forward with posting your content, and then you do promotion. And it's going to be like that. It's going to be like that for every content.
That's like the cycle
for every content creator.
The content. Yeah.
Yes.
And I really like that. I love that.
Unless you're getting a paid partnership, if somebody reaches out to you. And even then, we were approached by Descript and they want us to make a video. But then we would have to do keyword research to see if that video it's going to have some momentum on our channel.
I would say especially then, because if you have a sponsor that's reaching out to you, you want that piece of content to perform as well as it can. And you also, if you're going to get an affiliation from that, that's a whole nother motivation you have to make that piece of content perform better than any of your other videos or podcast episodes.
It's true. Yeah.
So I love this because now I'm seeing things more clearly in a way that I think we can sort of wrap up and start bullet pointing for our listener, which is you start with your research. And then quickly I just say, I love that you said whatever kind of content creator, because it's the same if you're a musician, if you're an author, if you're a blogger, whatever, it's still the same thing. You start with your research. From the research, that empowers a lot of your creativity. And then there's creativity. It's a little tricky because yes, you don't want, perfection to get in the way of good, or perfect to get in the way of good. And you want to still kind of lead with your heart and not get too caught up in your head so that you're passionate and having fun, but also staying on point as much as possible. So it's a nice balancing act that you get over time with practice. And that's not really what we're talking about. We're more talking about repurposing and the best practices of that. So research and then choose your platforms. That's all part of it, because choose platforms and part of that research is audience research, gathering audience insights. Really get to know who you imagine your audience is, and then you'll know where they're hanging out at. And once you've done all that, then you'll already know by the topic of your show, probably, you'll have a hunch where you should be, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or Clubhouse or whatever it is, or blogging or email marketing or Twittering or YouTubing or podcasting. I would say if you're solo, don't pick many more than 2 or 3 of these. I'd say hit 2 or 3 really hard, especially at the beginning. If you're a duo like Veronica and I, and we bit off a lot more than we could chew when we started, we were going to put out a weekly blog, YouTube video, and podcast episode. That was the repurposing strategy that started the Pod Sound School. Right
we didn't know what we were getting into.
Yes. And so now we've chosen and we are just kind of juggling all of our content. Where we're growing the most and have been growing the most is YouTube. So we tend to prioritize YouTube as far as not missing weeks and things like that. And we're just juggling all of these different things. Our podcast episode, if you're a longtime listener, you will have noticed that we hop on and off the podcasting train because we're overwhelmed with our other content. And so we break a lot of the guidelines that we tell our podskis to follow. But that's okay, because it's all market research and it's all us trying to improve ourselves and figure out what works and figure out a workflow that works. And a lot of that has to do with where people respond too, because maybe you think it's Instagram, But then you're on Instagram and you're like, if it feels like it's just constantly an uphill battle and you're swimming against the stream, against the current, then maybe you want to try somewhere besides Instagram. Also, maybe you want to try the newer things. It's always a good idea to hop on the new trends because those algorithms can push you a little harder. So TikTok might not be a bad idea. Definitely Instagram Reels, get on that and just pivot and be willing to pivot. So that's all workflow. But then we can get into batch recording or batch creation and scheduling. And that's really the part that we are barely starting to really tap into and see the fruits of. And I hope that you guys and you listener get to see the fruit of this too, as you'll see us become more consistent. Be like, how the hell do they have time to make all this content? And it's because we're tapping into the power of batch recording and scheduling. Everything can be divided into batches. So a perfect example of that, if we were to go back and break it down, research, you can batch research. So you could do monthly or quarterly research. So you don't have to be doing keyword research every single time you make a podcast episode. You can define what you hear a lot of marketing people refer to as pillars, or you can have content pillars, right? So if my keto podcast, it's all about keto, there could be lifestyle, there could be recipes, there could be struggles, and there could be something else, right? And so I kind of shift, and those pillars can come from my motivations and my goals. So for example, with us, we have pillars that may be trying to promote a certain online course that we'd like to get more students in, or we have a pillar that's just for audience growth. If you're just doing an example of that on YouTube, your script is going to change based off of your goals and based off of what your pillars are. But if you know what your basic content is and you know what your pillars are and you've done all that research and you know all those keywords you're trying to hit and that you're trying to rank for, and you just do that monthly or quarterly, then you can chill out. And when it comes time to actually create, then you can create based off of all of that. And you don't even have to worry about your research. And then I would say also just be ready and on the go. And this changes if you're doing a news or a current events podcast, something that is timely and not evergreen, then it might be a different strategy there too. And you will research will be baked into your weekly routine. But whatever it is, you can set aside certain days, certain hours, certain times, and within that hour you can pack in batch work. People have reported before, and you'll see a lot of people talk about how beneficial it is for them to get one type of work done at a certain time because their head is in that space. So what you could do then, instead of just writing one podcast episode, you could write 3 podcast episodes, right? Because you're in the writing mode. And that's something that we haven't ever really put into practice because we don't think we had the time to do that in that moment. So we never really gave it the good college try. And it's something that we're experimenting with, and we'll make sure to keep you up to date with any tips that we have. But it's a struggle that we all go through. You're not alone. And if you're managing just to get an episode out every week, you're really killing it. You're doing a good job, and you're doing better than most podcasters, ourselves included, because that's a task, and it's hard to stay on that hamster wheel of podcasting. It's hard to organize all this even enough into giving good tips, but that's what we mean when we refer to batch recording, is to try to save time by getting more done, sort of assembly line idea, right? You do a bunch of this, and then anytime you switch from one task to another, it requires you to sort of change not your mood, but you kind of put on a different hat when you're performing. You have to breathe, you have to drink water, you have to stretch, you have to put yourself in the mindset. And that's different when you're just on audio. When you're on a camera, that's totally different too. So when you're making a video, that's different. And it's all it can be very complex. And I guess I'm just going all over the place with this because I'm just trying to find a formula that you could follow. Maybe there isn't one because it's hard to try to put together a formula that would fit for all different types of content creators that they could follow. And that's why this is a frustrating episode for me.
Well, I just think that this idea of batch recording, it has a little bit of FOMO. It's oh my God, I should be doing it too. But every one of us has different schedules, different commitments. And maybe we don't have 6 hours that we can dedicate to writing episodes. So I think that's something realistic to do. That is something that we've been doing. So look at your calendar and see if you can have blocks of time on your calendar that you can be working on things. It also helps that if you're giving yourself time, you know that there's a deadline, that I need to have this written in 3 hours. Because something that happens to me is that it takes me forever to write an episode. It takes me forever to write a video. I just think that if you look at your calendar and you see like realistically, let's see, Mondays are busy for me. Then Tuesdays, I have 2 hours after I put the kids to bed to do my research, my keyword research. Then you do that. Get all those nice keywords and put them on a Excel spreadsheet so you don't have to do that all over again. And then let's say that on Wednesday you have another 2 hours. Then those 2 hours are going to be for you to write your episode or to outline your episode. So that way you look at your calendar and you don't get frustrated. You don't get down if you didn't do your batch recording, or if you don't be so hard on yourself. Mm-hmm. What you're doing is so much more important and impactful than batch recording and then doing all these fancy things and fancy terms. You should just have to keep going and keep perfecting and not be so hard on yourself. Just like get back up. Well, this didn't work this week. Well, dust yourself off. Mm-hmm. and apply what worked, and what didn't work, try to do it better. But don't give up. Don't get frustrated, because that's not going to help you to create good content. And just keep trying new things until you find the schedule and the method of producing content that works for you.
Okay, so that's all really good. I like that. So if we were to try to summarize everything we just talked about, it's pretty easy, really. We were just kind of trying to talk shop and sort of share our frustrations, but give you the tips the best we can about something that's very vague and very hard to actually apply a formula to. I love that Veronica hit kind of this frustration that I too have with formulas. And with the FOMO of, are you batch recording? Are you doing it this way? Or you're doing it this way?
I'm sancocho recording. So what?
Yeah. So I just have to record on my way to work on my phone. So what?
In my car.
My car. So it's there. Perfectionism and getting into our heads too much. It's really hard to strike that balance between the head and the heart. And so that's something that we're always dealing with ourselves. And I do think that the more you go at it and the more you have an open mind and the more you're willing to try new things. But for me, one of my biggest things that's hard for me is to put out content that I don't think is perfect, or that I don't feel like has enough value in it, or I don't feel like people are going to resonate with it, or it's not going to get enough downloads, or it's not going to be our best series we ever did. Yeah.
But here's the thing. If what you're putting out there doesn't have enough value for people will let you know. Your downloads are not going to grow. You're going to see those numbers and things like that. So you're going to know, because sometimes what it seems for us I'm not putting out value. I'm not providing value. We have the receiver on the other end being like, thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you for showing me how I can create a podcast using an app on my phone.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me that, that opened my eyes. It's a balance between you doing the best you can within the hours that you have available each week, mm-hmm. and posted, and let it go. So this may even come from my times as a musician. And, you write these songs, right? And you try to fabricate being creative when you're writing music. It's the same. And sometimes you're just not there and you have to fabricate it in the song you wrote. It's that wasn't my best work. Should I put it out anyway? Do I put out content that isn't at the top of my game?
And I think, yes, and that's the hard thing for me, but I'm giving into that more. And I have been, and that's been my journey. And I was hiding behind all of my fanciest microphones. And I was hiding behind all of the tech stuff when we first got into Pod Sound School and I still am, because I want to give the best possible value, but really it's just, it's a journey for me personally to kind of be my most open, vulnerable, naked self. And I think that's a lot of what goes into this whole workflow.
Yeah.
This workflow shit. And this whole part of being a content creator and this whole emerging onto we want, at first it's so magic. You start a podcast, it goes on the players. It's like, oh, Mom, I'm on the radio. But then, you get 10 downloads consistently. And then it's frustrating. And then you feel even worse than you did when you got started. And then you start questioning everything. And then the other thing that happens, like in our case, Veronica mentioned that teach people how to start a podcast on your smartphone. That was a big thing for us. We had this video that is by far our top performing piece of content. So that kind of makes you rethink everything too. And then you do your market research based off of your episodes that perform well, and your content actually starts to shift and it starts to change because you in turn are dancing with your audience and you're dancing with the insights that you get from your audience.
Yeah. That is so true. That is so true. And it's definitely, it's not a destination, it's a journey. And I feel like if you don't hit the publish button or the submit button, and if you don't let it go into the universe, like how are you going to grow and do things better if you're not getting feedback? Like how in the world you want to create this masterpiece if you don't get your people involved in your creation, if you don't show what you created to other people and say, hey, did you like this? Did you find this valuable? Did it hit a nerve? Did it make you cry? That's how we've been able to grow and to create content that is better and better. Yeah. It's because, and it's in those times that we've been able to communicate with our people during a live stream or the secret project that you've been working on, that you've been interviewing podcasters too, and you've been like gathering all this energy and the ideas and the things that they struggle with. So you have to let it go. Sometimes you just have to let it go and go with your heart. And I think that's where this episode kind of isn't exactly what you would expect from the episode at all. And I think I'm just going to have to be okay with that, because market research, baby. That's what we tell ourselves all the time. And if you're thinking, man, they really don't sound eloquent, what in the hell is Pod Sound School doing? Well, this is our 4th attempt at this, and we've tried very hard. I mean, how many times did I make you do the intro? Probably like 5 times. I spent a whole day on the outline for this, which we haven't really followed. Yeah. And it's kind of a little bit of a crisis of an episode for me, because things as podcast coaches that we coach our clients and our students, and it's the best possible information that we have at those moments. We find ourselves not taking that advice, or we find ourselves not living up to these standards that we provide to other people to try to live up to. And it creates, it's paralyzing because it's criticism that comes from ourselves. And that is so aggravating. And that's what, all of the great motivational speakers and books and everything that we're reading, and the Mel Robbins of the world and everything are trying to, that we live with this enemy in our head. It's true. That is like keeping us from creating all of this great stuff that we could create. Yeah, because in this day and age, we have the internet, we have YouTube, we have so many free resources and online courses, and we have Wi-Fi, we have computers, we have, everything that we need to create, we have. The only thing that is impeding people and impeding us from growing and achieving and doing the things that we want is ourselves. Really? Nothing else. It really is. And you can argue that as much as you want, and it could easily be argued back with you for 99.1% of the arguments, right? And I'm sorry, but if our friends in India are creating podcasts with their phone. I mean, they have so little, but they have their smartphones.
Yeah.
And they're creating content with their smartphones.
Yeah, and they're making really cool things
changing
happen.
lives.
Yeah, they're changing lives. They're getting interviewed they're really making a dent with stuff. They're doing it with their smartphones. And if also, like, you know, that's been what's so eye-opening for me too, is quality, the whole quality versus quantity thing. I think that's what we were getting into, and I could have just said that. And that's kind of the predicament I was in. Is like, I have this impossible idea of quality. I come from the world of film and music production, where you polish and polish and polish and re-edit and resubmit it. And then by the time the thing even comes out, it looks nothing like it was. And most of the time it's a big miss. And really, some of the best films and songs that we hear are the ones that just bled out of the people. It's interesting because it's creating with passion. It's creating with your heart. But it's also podcasting smarter, not harder. It's content creating smarter, not harder, which is a way to, how can we get the most out of this situation that we're doing? But I think sometimes that does mean turn off the camera and just record the audio. You don't always have to have the camera on every single time you're recording the audio. You don't always have to batch record. Find something that works for you, and it might be choppy, screwy. It might be a mess. It might be whatever it is. The main thing is that you just keep going, and that
you keep going, yeah.
Because the workflow will work its way out. I think we're creatures of wanting things to be easier anyway, and we get better at things anyway too. So I think that over time, it's just you will find your little pockets of time. You will find your efficiency.
Yeah.
You also go through your stages.
Get out of your head and take action.
Yeah, get out of your head and take action. And
there's just so much you can plan and think and anticipate and take notes about and diagram and all that. Just allow yourself that if that gets you off, if that gets you excited, then say, for this hour or 2 hours, I'm going to be planning and diagramming and all that. But after that, it's action, baby.
It's action.
I'm hitting the record button. I'm getting in front of the camera. I'm making things happen for me because the clock is ticking and there are people out there waiting for what I have to say, and I have to get on this quick.
To finish up this episode, we are going to move on to your homework, and I will give you your first homework assignment for this week. I want you to make a piece of content that you do not feel confident about. I want you to just put it out there. I want you to press the publish button. I want you to get on IG stories and show people around your kitchen. You know, I want you to I want you to make a reel where you're pointing at bubbles and dancing. Okay.
Is that going to be you?
That's going to be me.
Okay.
I'm going to do it.
People, you're listening. He's going to do it.
I'm going to point at bubbles and dance because I have guffawed and judged and all sorts
Guffawed?
I think guffaw is something.
Let me Google it.
Hopefully it means something.
Guffawed.
But I have really been, look at those people, those marketing people pointing at the bubbles and dancing. I'm never going to do. Well, yes, I'm going to do that. And that's your homework from me, is to put out a piece of content that either embarrasses you or that is way below your standards, or that is something you normally wouldn't do that makes you feel uncomfortable. Because that's what
tag us
in it. And then we'll
celebrate with you.
We'll celebrate with you. I'll do that as well. But this podcast episode was that for me. I was way too open, and I had my heart on my sleeve, and I was too vulnerable, and it didn't feel good. And I kept trying to stop Veronica, and I did stop her many times. We were at this yesterday. We did not. All that wound up in the trash, in the recycle bin. And then here we were today. We were going to be at this for another 2 hours.
I'm proud of you.
Well, I hope that there was some value that came from it. So what's your homework? My
homework is that starting Sunday, or you can even do this on Friday, I want you to look at the week ahead, if you're not doing this already. And I want you to work on a schedule that is going to work for you. I want you to to see if you can have some blocks of time when you can sit down and get things done within that block of time. If it's research, then do research. If it's writing, then do writing. If it's recording a podcast, then record a podcast. Whatever it is that you have to do weekly for your content creation. And I know that there are so many of you that have busy lives, that have jobs, families that are taking care of loved ones right now, that, we're on the same boat with you. We understand you. We know how frustrating it can be.
And what I really understand is you don't have the backdrop ready, right? Oh, and that thing didn't come in the mail. Oh, and you have to put sound blankets behind you for your shot. No, we're not going to shoot that with a sound blanket behind us or whatever it is. They're all excuses, and you can be creating content right now as well. So I just wanted to add that to it.
Yeah. So get, a Google Sheet or something like that. Or Google Docs.
The Google Calendar.
And get on that.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that week, I want you to be so proud of you. I want you to go get cake.
Yeah.
I want you to go get cake or a brownie.
Gluten-free cake.
Gluten-free because I have a gluten intolerance. Now,
you get bloated.
America gave that to me.
Yeah, so it did. America gave you a gluten intolerance.
We need to stop this.
Why? This is just going on. How long have we been talking?
I don't know. But we promise that our next episode, we are not.
The next episode is going to be very structured.
It can be less touchy-feely.
Yeah, and this one was touchy-feely because it hit a chord. It hit a nerve. And the reason it hit a nerve for me is because I feel inadequate as far as this goes. And this is the big thing that has been impeding our own growth as a business, and has just been impeding my growth throughout my whole artistic endeavors, and I've always been in the creative arts one way or another.
It's time to get rid of that.
It's also about being naked, shedding off some layers, and looking at your schedule and putting things on your schedule. And
how do you feel?
I feel good. I still am very...
Are you going to panic after we send this to Daniela?
Yes, I don't want to send it to Daniela. I want to make 20 edits to this before I send it to the editor. But I can't.
Well, thank you for sharing and for being so open and vulnerable. And we love you. Thank you for hanging out with us.
Yes.
Thank you for tuning in every week.
And we're going to finish off this 3-part series all about branding. And that one is Go Outside. And you're going to have to wait till next week to find out what we mean by that.
What your homework is going to be.
Okay. See you guys later.
Bye.